and a legacy that would endure. The sun continued to rise and set over the city of Toledo, marking the passage of time and the growth of a family. And in the heart of that city, the story of Melissa Burke and Joe Longo remained a shining example of what is possible when people come together with heart and purpose. It was a story of love, of laughter, and of the incredible power of a second chance. And it was a story that would never truly end, as its influence lived on in the lives of all who were touched by its warmth and wisdom. The morning sun filtered through the large windows of the Burke household, casting a warm glow over the carefully arranged furniture that spoke of a life defined by order and public service. Melissa Burke stood before the mirror, adjusting the lapel of her blazer with the precision of a woman who knew that in the world of local politics, appearance was often as important as policy. She was a woman of two worlds, a dedicated public servant by day, and a vibrant woman who cherished her few moments of personal time by night. As she prepared for another day at the city council, the television hummed in the background, a constant source of information and, occasionally, a reminder of the challenges she faced. She looked at her reflection, nodding with a sense of quiet confidence. She told herself that she had to turn on the heat during the day, for she believed that without a certain level of intensity, nothing would ever get done in the bureaucratic halls of the city. Her life had recently taken an unexpected turn, as she had become the legal guardian of her niece, Lennox, and her nephew Ryder, following a family scandal that had left her sister and brother-in-law absent from their lives. It was a heavy responsibility, one that she felt uniquely qualified yet frequently overwhelmed to handle. On the screen, a news report began to discuss the latest council stories. The headline was one Melissa had fought hard for: the decision to cap elementary school class sizes at 22 students. It was a victory for education, a cause she held dear to her heart. However, every political victory came with a cost. The camera cut to a scene of chaos in front of a local restaurant. A man was shouting, pointing at piles of garbage that were accumulating on the sidewalk. He complained that the service had been cut to once a week, and he blamed the council for the mess. Melissa watched as the man, a local business owner, vented his frustrations. He called the decision garbage, quite literally, and expressed his anger with a raw intensity that would have intimidated a lesser person. Yet, Melissa saw herself on the screen, standing tall and remaining the mature, rational adult in the face of his outburst. She knew that the reduction in trash service was the very thing that paid for the smaller class sizes. It was a difficult trade-off, one that required a thick skin and a steady hand. She whispered to herself, noting how she had stayed calm while crazy guys with trash bags came at her. In a moment of private triumph, she remembered thinking that the garbage guy should just deal with the reality of the budget. But then, another figure appeared in the news footage. A man who seemed even more desperate and frustrated than the restaurant owner. He was the kind of person who brought his garbage into a public arena and acted like a crazy person. Melissa had told him then, and she felt it even more strongly now, that one should not be that guy. One should act like a gentleman. The man in the footage had demanded to know the location of the money her brother-in-law had stolen from him. It was a painful reminder of the shadow her family had cast over her career. Her sister was not her, she reasoned, and she often wondered if anyone else in the room had a relative they were not exactly proud of. She felt it was not just her burden to bear. At least, she thought with a touch of dry humor, the man who had confronted her was somewhat attractive, though she quickly dismissed the thought, realizing that she did not truly see the appeal. Her father, the esteemed senator, had always told her that she held her own in difficult situations. He said she reminded him of himself, which was both a compliment and a source of pressure. She wondered if she smelled like authority, or perhaps something less dignified, like the strippers her father had once been associated with in a past scandal. She shook her head, focusing on the scent of her own fragrance, which she liked to believe smelled like power and responsibility. In her moments of humility, she had to admit she was doing a remarkable job. At the house, the atmosphere was less orderly. Lennox and Ryder were still adjusting to their new reality. Lennox, at 15 years old, was a whirlwind of teenage angst and creative rebellion. Ryder was younger, struggling with his own anger and the sudden absence of his father. Melissa tried her best to be a guiding light, but the transition was far from smooth. "Aunt Mel," Lennox called out as she entered the room, "why are angry white guys throwing trash at our front door?" Melissa took a deep breath, preparing to explain the complexities of political debate and community feelings. She started to say that the majority felt as though certain sacrifices were necessary, but Lennox cut her off, stating that the situation was getting heavy and really smelly. The teenager left a bag of trash on the floor, mentioning there were 10 more on the porch. Melissa sighed, turning her attention to the dresser she had recently put in Lennox's room. She asked if the girl had seen it, hoping for a moment of connection. Lennox replied that it was cute but that she was okay with her suitcases. It was clear that the girl still thought of her stay as temporary. She no longer shared her thoughts with her aunt, a sharp contrast to the days when she would talk about sneaking out or getting matching tattoos. Now, everything was a battle, and Melissa felt like a monster for simply trying to provide some stability. She remembered her own youth, though the memories of being 15 were a bit hazy. She joked about doing a lot of drinking then, a common refrain to mask the complexities of her own upbringing. She had a date planned for that evening, a rare opportunity to be something other than a guardian or a councilwoman. She had arranged for Rhonda to stay with the kids, but the plan was already showing signs of strain. Ryder entered, looking for his basketball. His coach had told him he needed a better jump shot, and Melissa wondered if he actually had one of those. She made a lighthearted comment about how Asian women like Rhonda were all about the hoops, trying to keep the mood light. She instructed the children to do their homework and, above all, to be good and not torch the place. The mention of fire was not entirely a joke. In his old house, during the week his father had disappeared, Ryder had expressed his anger by stacking 20 of his father's suits on the driveway, pouring expensive cognac over them, and lighting them up. It was a single alarm fire, but it was a clear sign of the boy's inner turmoil. Melissa believed that everyone needed to let things out every now and then, though she also knew that the urge to set things on fire should generally be repressed. As she prepared for her date, Melissa felt a flutter of nerves. She had not had a date since the kids moved in, and she wanted everything to be perfect. She considered her outfit, debating between shoes that said smart and independent versus those that hinted at her past as a bad girl. She finally settled on a pair that felt right, only to be interrupted by a phone call. It was the school principal, Miss Lunt. Melissa's heart sank as she listened to the news. Lennox had done something serious. She had handed out flyers at school containing an original poem that rhymed the principal name in a very creative and very insulting way. The news was already spreading, and there was a possibility that the local news channel would pick up the story. Melissa felt the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her. She was the legal guardian of the year, she thought sarcastically. 2 months into the job and her niece was already suspended. She knew she needed help, someone to bring structure and discipline to the household. Her friend had suggested hiring a professional organizer or a nanny, someone who could handle the day-to-day chaos while Melissa focused on her career. She went to speak with Lennox, hoping to find some common ground. She brought up a picture of them at a concert, trying to evoke the good times they had shared. But Lennox was not in the mood for nostalgia. She called Miss Lunt a fascist and refused to apologize for the poem. She pointed out that her parents had always bought her way out of trouble at her old school, a luxury she no longer had. The situation was reaching a breaking point. Miss Lunt expected an apology, and a meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon. Lennox, however, declared that she was not going back to school. Melissa insisted that education was the most important thing, but her words felt hollow as she prepared to meet her date, Griffin. Before she could leave, there was a knock at the door. It was not Griffin, but the man from the city hall meeting, the one who had been shouting about his lost money. He apologized for his behavior, admitting he had been a jackass. He then asked if her brother-in-law was in Bolivia, a question that caught Melissa off guard. She denied knowing his location and told the man to get lost. When Griffin finally arrived, Melissa felt a surge of excitement. He smelled handsome and looked wonderful,